Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to evaluate and optimize your donor experience with Great Nonprofits and Network for Good. My name is Neha Paralkar and I'm the Marketing Director at Great Nonprofits. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Great Nonprofits is the leading platform for community-sourced stories about nonprofits. And we'd like to thank our sponsors, Network for Good, for sponsoring this webinar. Network for Good offers a suite of software and services that make you an online fundraising superstar. And who doesn't want to be that, right? So today we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things. We're going to start with the science of storytelling and how you can improve your story to draw in new donors. We're then going to talk about identifying and removing obstacles from your donation experience, effectively thanking your donors. And finally, we'll discuss a few things that the best organizations do to retain their donors. Here to talk about all these amazing things today, we have Alia Goodyear, who's a senior analyst at Network for Good. We have Jonathan Gibbs, who's the VP of Product at Network for Good. And finally, we have Daniel Kadvani, who's the VP of Product at Great Nonprofits. Just a couple of things before we get started. Do participate in the poll and the survey. It does help us serve you better. And if you have any questions at any point of time, please feel free to ask them using the chat function. We'll be answering all your questions at the end of the webinar. And now, let me hand over to Daniel. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Neha. So at Great Nonprofits, we've been focused on building and growing a platform for nonprofits to tell stories. And so we're very excited to share both the scientific research and real-world tactics we've found that are effective in helping you tell effective stories, that getting your stories in front of your prospective and current donors to inspire them to become more engaged with your organization. So there's a great quote by Maya Angelou where she said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And that's really the foundation of why storytelling is so important, really to us as humans and also to us as nonprofit organizations looking to inspire donations. Communicating effectively in any way requires emotion, and nonprofits are built on service, empathy, and human interaction. Stories are the way to bring those feelings to your prospective donors and supporters. Now we're going to walk through a bit of the scientific underpinnings of why this is true. A 1997 study found that social topics accounted for almost 65% of speaking time in public places, regardless of age or gender. Humans love telling stories. I think this is something we can all relate to. And as humans, we're hardwired to seek out and share stories. Stories help us understand the people in our social networks, and sharing information through stories helps build trust and build relationships. This is what we're always seeking to do as organizations. Stories also build empathy. Humans, one of our unique abilities is actually to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and understand that other people have beliefs, desires, intentions, and perspectives that are different from our own. Stories help inspire this empathy and put ourselves in someone else's shoes. There's actually scientific proof here where the research in brain science by Yuri Hassan at Princeton University showed concrete evidence about why stories are such effective transmitters of feelings and ideas. The brain actually lights up in the same areas of the listener and the storyteller when a story is being told. So you can actually see the empathy that we all have experienced happening concretely through MRIs. And now moving on a bit to how we see this happening in the real world. Frankly, stories are inspiring. So here we're featuring a couple of the stories from donors on the Great Nonprofits platform, which you can read, but I think we can all empathize with hearing about how we've been inspired to give or get involved after we're hearing about someone we're close to, whether it be a colleague or a friend or a family member, their transformative experience given to a cause. Like, these stories are the mechanisms by which we become inspired to get involved in our own lives. What's a wonderful thing about the digital age that we live in today is that now stories are scalable. So in the past, stories were told one-on-one, or maybe in the format of a play where it's as many people could fit in a large space. Now technology has given us the ability to multiply that emotional impact and share stories with thousands or even millions of people with the click of a button. This is an amazing opportunity for nonprofit organizations to share the rich and wealth of stories that you have and get them in front of folks who want to be involved with your organization. So we have some data-driven backing driven by surveys on the GreatNonprofits platform of the concrete impact of stories. We believe stories are the most powerful way to support mission-driven organizations and foster change in our world. So here on the slide, 8 out of 10 donors on our platform said that stories on the GreatNonprofits platform influence their giving. 9 out of 10 donors say stories have shaped their opinion of a nonprofit, and 9 out of 10 donors also say that stories have helped them understand a nonprofit's mission. So clearly you can see that stories are very impactful in terms of folks who are choosing to allocate their time and treasure and their energy. This is how they get inspired and pick organizations to get involved with. So now we've got a brief poll. We'd love to hear from you of what type of stories are you telling. So Neha is going to show you the poll, and feel free to click all of the options that apply.
So we're going to give you a couple of seconds here to vote. So please do select any option that is applicable to you.
Great, so now you can see the poll results, and there's an overwhelming focus from those of you who responded, both on your own nonprofit history, mission, and focus with 43%, and then the folks you serve from client or program beneficiary experiences also with 43%. And then we're seeing very low numbers for staff experiences, donor experiences, or volunteer experiences. This is really interesting, and we'll speak more going forward in the presentation about types of stories. But what we've actually found at GreatNonprofits is that pulling in some of these donor or volunteer experiences really helps build empathy amongst prospective folks who want to get involved in those same ways. They want to understand what their experience could be like if they get involved with your organization. So moving on in our slides, what makes great stories regardless of the subject? We've identified 4 characteristics. Great stories are concrete, so they paint a rich picture about real, relatable people, whether these are clients, prospective donors, or volunteers. They inspire emotion. We spoke at this at length already. The emotional hook is what ties people into the story. Stories need to be credible, so they need to come from a trustworthy source. And it helps if they're surprising. If they break a mold or an expectation, this helps to draw folks in as well. All of these characteristics combine together are what drives these empathy and responses in the folks who read your stories or hear about your stories.
Daniel, sorry to interrupt you for just a second, but I just wanted to check if everyone's able to see the slides, or if you can still see the poll window. Okay, I think everyone is only seeing the poll window.
Thanks, Neha. Let me present again and see if we can get the slides back. How's that look?
That's perfect. Thank you, Daniel.
Great, thank you, Neha. So as I was saying, these are the 4 characteristics of what makes stories impactful. And from here, we're going to move on to briefly talking about how at Great Nonprofits we've built a platform to help you gather the stories that you want to share with the world. So first of all, like, where do you start to gathering stories? We recommend reaching out to the folks who are closest to you, your supporters, so your board members, your donors, your volunteers, and beneficiaries. You're familiar with this based on the responses to your polls. But once again, we do recommend thinking about those donors and volunteers as well. Here, how do you invite folks to tell their stories? We've made it easy for your reporters to share stories. We have pre-created social post emails to send your followers, and also an SMS-based tool, which is great for folks who may not have regular internet access to go online and post a story. And all these stories will be posted to your profile on GreatNonprofits.org. It's wonderful to use your own unique relationships with your clients to get creative when asking for stories. So Friends of Public Radio Arizona had a spot on the radio asking for stories. The Human Resources Center used their email signature to send a link to the reviews every time they sent her an email. Communities in schools actually asked students or parents who wanted to give back to write a quick story. And then at Great Nonprofits, we also have a program called the Top Rated Awards, which is designed to recognize nonprofits and amplify the stories your supporters tell and help give you credibility, which is a key component of the storytelling pillars we talked through previously. So the top rated rewards are a People's Choice Reward, where any nonprofit that gathers 10 or more 4- or 5-star ratings are connected to stories in our platform and maintains an overall average of 3.5. Will win a top rated reward. We give you a badge that you can place on your collateral, and 72% of people said that that presence of their badge increased their likelihood of giving. And the top rated status is important because it builds credibility. So we help give you the tools to add this badge across your site, your social media profiles, your cover photos, and then folks coming to your site will feel that credibility attached to all your stories. We also use top rated nonprofits to select stories for blog posts, donation roundups, and more to amplify the stories that your supporters are telling. So lastly, as we talk about stories, we want to move on to talk specifically about research we've conducted around donor story videos. 2 pieces here. We focused on donors because the goal was to build empathy amongst other prospective donors, and then video as a high impact medium that's increasingly being used to storytelling to bring stories to life. So we want to share some of our research and then the concrete toolkit we've put together to help you actually build video stories like this yourself. So right now I'm going to share one of the donor stories we've put together with you. And moving onward, I want to describe how we've produced many of these videos with donors and supporters, and we wanted to test the effect of these videos on the visitors to our Great Nonprofits website. So based on all the story research we've shared with you, our hypothesis was that video stories would increase engagement and donations from the visitors to our website because these folks would experience that empathy, that feeling, and be more inspired to get involved with the organization in the video or maybe another organization on our site. We were also interested in testing how specific types of videos would impact giving. So you may be familiar with the short, snappy social network style videos that may be like 30 seconds or less versus more of a longer form detailed video like we shared with you right here. So what we did is set up a testing to look at across different videos, how videos compared to having no video on the site at all, how telling a story with video versus a blog post impacted engagement and giving, and then different types of short versus long videos as well. And the results were really striking. So adding video stories substantially decreased bounce rate. So the bounce rate is the number of person who comes to a website and leave without doing anything. So ideally, you don't want folks to do that. So videos increased engagement on the site. People watched the video and then wanted to learn more. And most importantly, they increase donation actions on the site. And there were some substantial increases in these donation actions when comparing video to a text story. So video is far more engaging than reading a blog post, and also when comparing shorter videos to longer videos. So having learned this through our testing, we wanted to give you some tools to create your own videos. So the first step here is seeking out video inspiration. And at GreatNonprofits, we have a list of hundreds of these giving stories videos on our YouTube channel that you can come and watch to get inspired. But broadly, knowing what you want from your videos will help you brief your videographer and plan for the different elements of your videos. And in terms of actually building a video, this may be something that you have a lot of familiarity with or no familiarity with. We've created a comprehensive set of toolkits and checklists that will walk you through the video creation process, help you find videographers who may donate their time to help out. And these checklists offer all the steps our team followed to create the videos like we've shown. We'll share these links to the downloadable toolkits with you, so keep an eye out in that for your email after the webinar. So now that you've learned how to tell great stories, maybe you're inspired to tell more stories or different stories, you need to make sure these folks you're inspired have a seamless way to give. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alia to walk through the giving experience.
Alia, can you hear us? I think you guys might be muted. Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Daniel Neha. My name is Alia with Network for Good. And so, sorry, you can see on the presentation, what do we mean by the donor giving experience? And really, it's any interaction point you have with your donors. So you can think about that very first time they give, how you respond to that first gift, and then ongoing, what is the story, as Daniel was just talking about, that they're hearing from you? What do they see from you? And as they continue to have a relationship with your organization, what is it that they're hearing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through some of the obstacles, things that can get in the way of donors really having a strong relationship with your organization. And then I'm going to talk some about how you might evaluate the different touch points you have with the donors and ways that you might improve those for yourself, for your organization. And then I'll look at specifically the online experience and show you some examples of a strong and clean and smooth donor giving experience. All right, so the first is obstacles. So one way of thinking of it is, donors, yes, they are making a donation to you, but really, they are giving through your organization to a particular cause that they feel strongly about. And that's just sort of a reminder that part of your job is to kind of get out of the way, as it were, and make that experience smooth and easy for them so they really feel connected to the good work that you are doing. A lot of the issues that we see are around inconsistency, where there isn't a clear voice, a clear story that Daniel was talking about again, or that you're not requesting a clear, specific action from them. It may be that you have too many calls to action in what you're putting out. It's good to simplify. It's good to give them, this is what we'd like you to do. This is the action that we need you to take. They can get distracted or overwhelmed if there's too much going on. If you have an appeal that feels like every other appeal, it will probably get passed over. If you don't, again, have that story that is compelling, the donor will probably move on. If they feel that maybe their past involvement, if they've been connected with your organization for a while, if they feel that that isn't recognized in your communication with them, that might keep them from continuing their support. I know that a lot of organizations worry about sending too many communications, and from what we've seen, most organizations do not, but it's really about finding a balance where you are communicating meaningful information and really keeping your donors engaged and connected and involved as you go along. So how do you go about evaluating your donor's experience? So you want to try to get different perspectives if you can. Certainly you can try to put yourself in your own donor shoes, being a secret shopper. And you can also bring in other people, either colleagues, maybe peers from another organization if you have a close relationship there, or friends or family. There are fundraising coaches as well that you can hire. People that you might have a fresh or outside perspective. And one of the things we'd encourage you to do is to take your last 3 communications that you sent to your donors, whether they were online or offline, whatever it is, put those 3 next to each other. Even start with visually. Do they look like they belong together? And then get a little deeper with it. What's the story that you're telling through these communications? Is it cohesive? And not that it should be the same story over and over again, but is there a complementary story? Does it build on the last piece? Is there some kind of connection or through line? And then also, you might put on your own critic's hat whenever you receive communications from other nonprofits. Consider what you find most compelling in them. What is it that interests you and speaks to you? Why would you give? And then you can sort of turn that and think about how your donors perceive you and what compels them. Very practically, you should make sure that you have a clear call to action that you want your donors to take, whether that's attending an event, volunteering, sharing on social media. Maybe it's just reading an update to understand where their money is going and the progress that you're making. Or maybe it's about making a donation. And if you are sending an appeal, make sure there are very simple instructions. If it's direct mail, very simple instructions. If it's online, one click should get them to your donation form. There shouldn't be other competing actions that distract from whatever that primary call is. So once you've done that work and you've sort of gone through and tried to make your communications consistent and clear, the next layer would then be to try to make them more personal. You can recognize the amount that a donor made in their last gift and remind them what that money is going to support. You can recognize them if they've done any volunteer work or helped to spread the word about your organization in some way. You could tailor the communications based on their relationship to your organization. You might have a different message, say, if you are writing to friends or family of the organization's beneficiaries, rather than writing to donors who give through a workplace giving program or donors who consistently come to your events. You may have different tacks that you take with those different audiences. Donor surveys can be a great tool. We found that with our customers' emails, if they had survey in the subject line, they had very, very high open rates. We found that donors really like to share their opinion. And so they can help you understand what you're doing well or where you might need to improve. They can also give you more information about themselves. And that again, you can use to help tailor the communications you send to them. You can ask if you're doing an okay job, thanking them, and how often they want to hear from you. Again, if you're nervous about that over communicating, you can ask them, how often do they want to hear from you and through what avenues? You can even ask for their personal story, again, as Daniel was saying, to gather those donor stories and really have that those stories that you can then use in your other communications. You can ask for their birthdays, so you can send them a personal birthday message, and then you also get some demographic data along with that. We actually have a webinar coming up at the end of April about donor surveys. So if that's of particular interest, you could check that out. All right, so I'm going to go on now to talk specifically about the online experience. So you can see from this statistic, this is a global survey so the participants here did have to at least have access to internet and email. But the findings of the survey, especially in the U.S., were very high percentage of people preferring to give online. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some specific examples of the online experience that we found to be effective. All right. So one of the interesting things that you can do is take that story and carry it through from piece to piece. So in this case, this is an email that was sent out. It has a compelling story about Sophia, who has a great smile now, but had tooth pain, and this organization helped her out with that. So it tells her story briefly. It has one clear action at the end, which is donate. When you click on the donate button, it takes you right to their donation form. And the form then has the same picture. So it's really carrying that through. You're staying with Sophia on her journey, and you're reminded of, why you're giving, and you're helping her and others like her. One of the other important things, again, is sort of to clear the clutter and get, other pieces out of the way. This is a website homepage, but it's also, you can see the donate is very clear, prominent in the top menu. So that means it can be accessed. It's a one-click access to a donation form from any page on this website. So anywhere you go throughout the website, you have that call that is there waiting. Again, that's getting out of the way. Pictures. So this is a donation page where the picture really is the primary piece, and it really does tell a story. So this is a donation page. Of course, you can also use pictures in offline communications. And I would encourage you to be picky about the images you use. I think the good news right now is that, with the prevalence of cell phones, you can ask your community to take pictures at your events and share them with you. And you can find the best ones. Don't be afraid to crop them. Try to focus in on, what the story in the image is and highlight that. And that will really pull people in. Faces are great. This is a great example. You've got a smile. You've got eyes looking directly at the person. It's compelling. So in terms of a clear ask, I think this is an interesting example where they've really distilled down what they're asking of their donors into 2 sentences. They are compelling a gift with urgency. They're showing a clear benefit that comes from giving. And they're also putting some personal responsibility on their donors for making the world a better place. Now, you may not be able to distill what you do down into 2 sentences, but it might be an interesting exercise for you to try. You might have your staff do this, see what you come up with and see if there are any themes that emerge out of that. I'll show some other options too if the 2-sentence, that doesn't apply. But it might be something that you learn out of even just trying that. One of the other things about this page I just wanted to say is, so you can see they have a default amount here. The $100 is selected by default, and we definitely recommend that. There's a default amount and that it's not the lowest amount, because that can also encourage larger gifts. So this one is one where there's not just 2 sentences. Each dollar amount is tied to a specific benefit that those dollars can give. So this is a great way to connect the donor right from the start to the impact that their gift will have. If they can clearly see what giving accomplishes, they may also choose to give a higher amount if they feel they want to fill whatever that specific need is. So we call these impact statements. It's really this amount of money can support a particular piece of our program, and it's the urgency and importance of whatever those particular pieces of your work are. One other aspect with online giving is social proof. So this is, again, sort of that question of credibility. And part of it is, that your donors, this is showing a donor scroll on a donation page. So that's, when a supporter, if they choose to share their name, of course they can be anonymous, but that they are writing a message and putting their own experience out there of why they're giving, or, encouraging you in your work, or encouraging others to give. And again, you heard about the top-rated awards program, but badges and other type of proof that legitimizes you and your work and your cause that certainly only helps. And mobile. More and more, it is just important that you make sure that your online donor experience is clean and easy to use on mobile devices. We found on our giving platform over the past few years that mobile giving is increasing every year. So just make sure that as you're doing this exercise, as you're putting yourself in your donor's place, do consider those who are on mobile devices and what they see when they come to your website, when they come to your donation form. What is that experience like for them? Try making a donation from your phone, or ask someone else to do that and see how easy it is, how long it takes, if there's anything about it that is cumbersome or tricky as you go along. And the last thing I have here is, again, in terms of social engagement, is having the ability for your donors to share their experience with others, like making that easy and giving them the ability to pass their experience on and encourage others then to give. The social aspect of giving is a key part of how they can grow their own support beyond what they themselves are able to give. All right, so I am going to pass this over to my coworker, Jonathan. He's going to talk about thanking your donors and retaining them.
Great. Thanks, Alia. Wanted to continue on the entirety of the donor experience that we were talking about at the beginning, which starts with understanding your story and continues all the way through thanking your donors and engaging and retaining them. And so some of these things may be things that you think of as being obvious, but not everyone is always doing them. And so we wanted to reinforce them and then provide a couple of really interesting examples of how people are leveraging thank yous to really engage donors as much as they are with the story at the beginning is the story at the end. And so a few best practices here that we want to talk about for thanking donors. So number one is to provide an immediate tax receipt for online gifts. So that's for sure for online gifts. You always want to make sure that people are used to receiving a receipt when they make a purchase online or do a transaction online. So sending an immediate receipt for an online gift. In addition, the second is to be able to send a personalized thank you within a week. Certainly for offline gifts, you will likely be sending a paper thank you or a letter. And you can also be doing that for online gifts as well. People often ask, do we need to match the medium through which they give? Meaning, if they give online, does that mean that they want to get a thank you note via email? And sometimes that's appropriate, but you do want to sort of mix up the mediums through which you're contacting people. So it may be appropriate to get the first time someone gives a gift online to actually send them a letter that has a handwritten thank you, and to send them a letter or an email. People will not get tired of being thanked for their gift, and it's okay to thank them via both email and via postal mail, particularly if you're able to do something handwritten, the signature of the executive director, a short note. So it doesn't have to always match the medium, and you can use both mediums in that kind of case. The second is it sounds obvious, but is to reinforce the impact that their gift will have, and that donors do not get tired of hearing about the good work that they're supporting. So when you're sending a thank you, be sure to reference exactly what it is that they initially wanted to give to. When they made a donation, they were inspired to give for a particular reason, and you want to carry that through the donation thank you, because you're going to end up engaging them again on that same topic. You want to contact them using their preferred communication method. So if you already do know that they prefer to be communicated in a certain way, that's an opportunity for you to communicate through that to respect their wishes. And then is to send pictures and leverage video. And I'm going to show that in just a minute around what we're talking about there. This is an area that people are often overwhelmed by, but it's something that our research has shown that these simple, effective, authentic videos can be more powerful even than something that has a high level of production quality. We're not talking about Hollywood here. We're talking about things that you can shoot on your own phone and then be able to attach to a thank you email, for example. We do call here a bonus is that sometimes donors are okay with being acknowledged publicly as well. And so if you do have a donor that is not anonymous and is okay with you sharing their information, this may be something you can ask to say, how would you like your name to be shared sort of on our wall of fame, things like that. And if they provide their name, you can actually reference them or call them out in social media and say, thank you to these amazing donors for their gift, and give them some online sort of online credibility. Everyone likes to be recognized online, and a lot of the reason people are on social media is for that self-confidence, that self-reinforcement, and for some of that social credibility. So it's okay to be doing that if the donors are okay with that. So I'm going to show an example of a thank you here. One of the great things about this is there's a couple of things. Is that if you look through here, you'll see the usage of the word you often. And we say that if you're not using the word you at least 5 times in your thank you email, you're not talking to the donor, right? It's about them. You want to be talking about the work that they are doing. As Alia mentioned, that they're giving through your nonprofit to a cause. They're not giving to your nonprofit. So they want to hear about how they personally are affecting. Here, one of the things that they've done nicely too is bolding a key stat. So people often want to include a lot of stats, but if you include a couple of key stats, people will find that to be incredibly effective, and they'll be able to relate to it. So the idea of sort of less is more, and focusing on one particular outcome that's related to the story. This one is really beautiful the way that they did this. So they took a video. This is a Family Resources Preschool, which is a nonprofit preschool. And as a way to thank the donors, in that email that you just saw a minute ago, they embedded a video. And when I click this, you'll be able to see how simple and how effective this kind of thank you can be. So we love watching that video and seeing the enthusiasm of the kids, and certainly it creates that kind of emotional tie that people have when they gave to that preschool. That's the kind of joy they were hoping to impart. We also have another video. This kind of reflects the idea of if you have your own iPhone or your own smartphone, you can just point it at yourself. And this one's really powerful because this person is actually on site at one of the places that they're able to, that their work is happening. And so I'm just going to play, maybe not the whole thing, but some part of it so you can get a good sense for the kind of videos that you could do. So just wanted to show an example of how, in that case, you're not, obviously you can see the authenticity. That person's excited. He's just conveying the impact that they've had. He's on site where they are. And the production quality is it doesn't have to be high. So we're just encouraging people to more and more use video to thank their donors. I'm going to finalize on what the best organizations do to retain their donors, and then we're going to shift to some Q&A. So once you've told the story, you've gotten people to give, and you've thanked them for their gift, the next step is obviously to continue the story, right? This is obviously a natural part of the fundraising life cycle, which is, get people in, get the donation, appropriately acknowledge them, and then how do you steward them and retain them? We know that most organizations, the average statistic is that organizations only retain 40% of their donors from one year to the next, which means that you have to go out and find 60% of your individual donations need to come from brand new donors, which is a lot of work and a much easier job for you if you're able to actually retain those donors from one year to the next. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to do so. It just requires some consistency and a few key things to do to follow. So see, here's what some of the best organizations do to retain their donors. The first is that they thank the donors properly and quickly. So we just went over that, and that's around, there shouldn't be a long lag between when somebody makes a gift and when they receive both the receipt and the acknowledgement or the thank you. So that's incredibly important. The second is to communicate the outcomes. So whether that could be in the form of a regular project update. So when someone gave to a campaign, you want to reach out to those that gave to that campaign and give them an update specifically on that. Go with the story form first and stats second. So that's around people will relate more to the impact of their gift if it's told in a story format. And you can use different voices for that. So a number of people were answering the poll, and I think that's great around the different ways that you're whose voice you're communicating. So people give to an organization to affect a particular outcome, but they also care about connecting to the people that work at that organization. So sending an impact story about what's happened from the point of view of a board member, or the point of view of a staff member, or the point of view of a volunteer, or all of the above sprinkled throughout the year is incredibly impactful. So people want to hear about how it's impacting both the lives and the causes that they care about, but also the people that are working there. You can also do an annual report, and you can ease into an annual report with just a summary year-end communication. This is also a great opportunity to use video to encapsulate some of that story. After the donation, you want to engage the donor on something non-donation related before you ask them for money again. So this might be something as simple as an interesting finding that your organization has come across. It could be something around an event that you want them to participate in. You might reach out to them again and ask them if they would be willing to like you on Facebook or follow you on Twitter, or do something that is a lower level commitment but keeps them engaged, so that it's not just about always asking for funds. You want to be transparent and accountable publicly. So when you receive the donations, you want to be posting on sites like GreatNonprofits, where people are going to validate that the organizations that they're giving to are in fact utilizing the funds responsibly and are making an impact. And there's a few other sites that help, where people go naturally to look for what nonprofits are doing and whether it's a nonprofit that's accountable and is using their funds. And certainly social media. People are going to look to see what you're doing on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and whether or not you're regularly communicating the impact that you have. So you want to be transparent and accountable publicly. And then lastly is this idea of sort of how you introduce people into new programs or things that you care about. We all want unrestricted gifts, or we want to fund specific campaigns at times. But the first is to talk to the donor about what they are interested in and what they gave to, not necessarily what you think is most important right now. And then you have the opportunity to introduce them to new programs progressively. So you can have 75% of your communication be exactly about the program that they gave to, and then carve off some space in that communication to talk about the other programs that you do that are important, so that you have the opportunity to expand the scope of what they might be interested in contributing to, as well as awareness of the other things that might be going on in the organization because of all the different types of work that you're doing. So that's just a glimpse into the story, connecting it to the thank you, and then some of the best practices that we know around stewarding. There could be a lot, but I think focusing on this small set and being consistent about it is really what we find that the best charities and the best organizations are doing. Not trying to get overly fancy, but really trying to hone in on personalizing their message and then just being consistent about it. So I'm going to hand it back to Neha for some Q&A time, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Alia. That was really great. That was very informative. And now, if you guys have any questions, please do, please leave us some questions in the chat function, and we will start answering them in just a few seconds. All right, to get started, Daniel, we have a question here. If can we share some more statistics on the results of the donor tests?
We absolutely can. And I also just want to mention that we have all these stats shared in a blog post as well, so we can share that out after the webinar to supplement what I speak through in the next couple of minutes. So to speak more in depth around our Giving Stories video testing, we focused our testing in three major areas, as I mentioned. So testing the impacts of donor videos versus no videos at all versus other story formats like photos or blog posts. And then testing different donor formats. And then how we measured our test is we were looking at the engagement for new and current GreatNonprofits users coming to our website. And when measuring the engagement, we tracked all of the different types, the actions of users could take on our site and separated them into three buckets. The first bucket was browsing. So like clicking to look at a nonprofit profile, reading stories. The second was action, so writing a review, signing up for nonprofit volunteer opportunities, subscribing to our newsletter, and then donation. So this was any action associated with donating to a nonprofit, clicking the donation button, adding a donation to their giving basket, and all the way through to the end donation. And in terms of the specific metrics, what we did is we added video to our high traffic landing pages, which we call the city pages. And these are pages listing different nonprofits in your metro area. And compared both against the designs with no stories as well as photo stories. And here are our metrics and results. Video produced as high as 50% decrease in the bounce rate. So the number of users who came to these city pages and left without taking action decreased by 50%. And that was controlling for actions like clicking play on the video. We didn't count that because that wouldn't be a fair test. And video, the most important is that video almost doubled the number of donation-related events taken by users, like entering the donation flow. And these results were consistent whether we were comparing video to a photo story or a text story. So the takeaway is that video is by far the most impactful medium for telling these stories. Then our second set of tests, we actually looked at short form versus longer form videos. So we discovered that videos were the best. Let's figure out the best format for the videos. So we tested shorter form social style videos with text overlays. So these are designed for sound off or mobile experience against longer form videos. The short form videos increased our bounce rate by a bit. So some folks like got to the point of the video quicker and then may have left our site. But they drove substantially more user engagement, almost 50% higher compared to long form videos, and almost 100% higher donation actions than the long form videos. So the takeaway here, and we'll share all these granular data with you in the blog post, is that video is the most impactful medium for telling stories, and shorter form videos are more impactful than longer form videos.
Thank you, Daniel. The next question that we have is for Alia. And the question is that if your communications are 3 to 6 months apart, how do donors remember your themes over a period of time?
Sure, yeah. Well, first I would say that if they're 3 to 6 months apart, that's probably too far apart. So you might want to consider putting some more communications in there and mixing it up, doing email and letter. I think there's a question, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I saw later on about, the expense of doing a postal mail piece when you're not asking for a donation, but you might actually consider a postcard that has a great photo and a quick update about, again, what their dollars are going to support. Again, if they're further apart, that's part of where consistent branding and a strong, compelling logo that they'll remember, those pieces are even more important. But again, I'd encourage you to reach out more often, definitely. Even think about maybe like once a month, if you could do that. But again, through different channels, it doesn't all have to be through the same one.
Great, thank you so much, Alia. There's another question for you. And is there a platform that we can use to make some of these simple and compelling asks that you mentioned earlier for websites?
Well, of course, I'm partial to Network for Good's platform, but I think there are a lot of platforms out there right now. And one of the things you might look at actually is a platform where you can have different campaign pages that have different focuses. So again, you can keep them clean and simple. That's one of the things we encourage our customers to do, is to really tailor a particular donation form to a particular ask. So again, you can use a picture that ties through from an email that you've sent or a newsletter or direct mail. The donation page has a similar story in the same photo. So they make that connection, and there's that through line. So I think it's more about not necessarily, well, again, I would promote our platform, but not the specific platform, but really what you do with it, and that you're consistently telling your story, and that you are compelling with, again, images that draw people in, with videos that share the stories that really can inspire other people. And so it's really more about, the content that you're putting out there, because there are a lot of different platforms you could choose these days.
Great, thank you, Alia. Jonathan, could you share a little more information from the research that you were talking about earlier, which was the impact of sharing photos and videos as thank yous?
Sure. Absolutely, and I think I'll keep it short. Daniel, I think, answered some of this as well in terms of the impact that it has is the number of people that open videos get higher open rates, and the length of the video is, as Daniel was also alluding to, is important. This kind of short form video, 30 to 60 seconds for a thank you video, can even be as short as 15 seconds. So we can share a little bit more, but I think Daniel touched on some of that already. And just around photos, again, we've learned a lot around this, which is just around people want to often show several photos of the different work that they're doing, but our research just shows that one compelling photo does more in terms of driving donation action than 3 photos, for example, because it allows people psychologically and mentally to be able to focus on one thing. The most important part of that is to, again, ensure that you're replying to people and sending them thank yous about the campaigns that they're focused on, and so the imagery needs to be consistent with the impact that they're having. So so that's a little bit of the photo and video, but it sounds like Daniel has even more to share.
Great. And Jonathan, do you think that when sending thank yous, is it more effective to send, or how much more effective is it to send handwritten notes compared to emails? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't have any statistics on that, but certainly, as I referred to earlier, first-time donors often should receive a handwritten note. I think as you build a relationship with someone, I think you have the opportunity to periodically send them a handwritten thank you, even randomly to them. If you haven't sent them a personalized thank you note within the last 6 months, that's a good opportunity to send them one of those. Also, at the end of year, people are expecting that kind of thing. So I think first-time donors, really important to send a handwritten note. I think sending both, again, if they're giving online, is to send an email thank you and a handwritten thank you, because one is going to arrive much faster than the other, and they're going to be spaced out, and it's just going to keep you in the forefront of that donor's mind, and it's going to just allow them to recognize that you're really thinking about them, not just once, but that continually. And so if those things hit at different times, that's going to be effective. So I would say handwritten notes for sure for first-time donors, and then periodically for your other donors, and certainly for any kind of major gifts, you're going to need to do much more outreach, handwritten note, phone call, an invitation, a specialized invitation to an event, or a specialized invitation to meet with them. So.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. And so, one of the questions that we also have is that when it comes to, mostly older donors, it's very costly to do mailings and, without a donation request. So what would you suggest if a nonprofit mostly has older donors, and if they're looking for an alternative to, to direct mail?
Sure. So I would say that some of this, as we're seeing this shift, is that the largest growing population of Facebook users is older donors, and so I think that you certainly should be thinking about leveraging direct mail, but don't downplay the idea that older donors are only have direct mail or only opening mail. I think email and social are still incredibly impactful, and so this is the opportunity for you to, when you actually do get a donation, is to ask for a couple of additional things that help you to engage with them directly. So whether that be Facebook or their email, is being able to do that. Alia referenced also some lower cost items to do, sort of like a postcard run or something that's a little bit cheaper that just has one image and a short story. So things that are that can be a lower cost and can be outsourced to someone and run it at a much lower cost, and then always including in those direct mail pieces the link to your website, the link to your Facebook page, like how to get in touch with you and how to get involved with you online in addition to offline.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And so, Daniel, this one is for you very quickly since we're absolutely running out of time. What is the optimal length for the time of the videos in supporting in support of fundraising? So I'm guessing, what is the average duration that we should film videos for? Daniel? So I think Daniel's having some.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Okay. So the question was, what is the optimal length of time for the videos, for donor videos?
Yeah, and the answer is we'll have more information around this in our toolkit, but 30 seconds or less.
All right. Thank you so much. And so I think that's, we've tried to answer as many questions as we could. What we're going to do is we'll also supplement these questions with a few FAQs that we may publish on our Great Nonprofits blog, so that we can have more answers for you, and we'll share that with you guys a couple of days down the line. So the next thing that I guess we'd want to say is thank you very much for joining in today, and thank you for participating. Thank you for asking all your questions. I'd like to thank our speakers as well. Thank you so much, Daniel, Alia, and Jonathan. Thank you so much for all the wonderful tips and tools that you shared today. I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be sending you a follow-up email with the deck and the recording to this webinar. So we'll also share with you some URLs and resources that we mentioned in this webinar. So keep an eye for that in the next couple of days. And also, one more request for you is that please do complete the survey that will pop up as soon as this webinar ends. Yeah, that's about it from us. We really hope that you found this webinar helpful, and thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.